There are certain type of characters who don't really need reinvention. They kinda just need the right moment. In fact, Blade has always been one of these. When Marvel's Blade was officially announced, it didn't arrive with fireworks or an overload cinematic montage. It just arrived quietly, confidently, and with a tone that felt deliberate. And that tone told us this project understands the character. Blade has never been about spectacle for the sake of spectacle. He's not a brightly lit symbol soaring over skylines. He's not a charming billionaire or a god wrestling with cosmic destinies. He is a hunter who operates in shadows, and the announcement respected that identity from the very first frame. The decision to place the project in the hands of Arkane Lion is, we think, what truly elevates the conversation. This is a studio responsible for Dishonored, Deathloop, two titles defined by systemic depth, environmental storytelling, and player-driven solutions. Arkane does not design games that simply push players forward through the script. They build spaces instead that react, systems that interlock, scenarios that reward experimentation. That philosophy aligns almost perfectly with Blade's character, because he is not reckless, he is precise. He studies his prey, understands his environments, and strikes when it matters. Setting the game in Paris is in fact another inspired decision that speaks volumes about its ambition. Paris offers more than visual beauty. It offers layers. It's a city filled with centuries of history, underground catacombs, tight alleyways, rooftops, a cultural atmosphere that feels both romantic and dangerous. In the hands of Arkane, Paris will not merely serve as a backdrop, but as a character in itself. If their past work is any indication, in fact, this city will be designed vertically and densely, with interconnected pathways, hidden passages, secrets lurked into every corner. The idea of vampires embedded within Parisian high society operating beneath the city feels not just plausible, but inevitable. What makes this project specifically compelling is the opportunity to explore Blade's internal conflict through gameplay systems rather than cutscenes alone. Blade exists in constant tension between his humanity and his vampiric nature. He survives on the edge of hunger while maintaining control over it. That duality is not simply narrative flavor, it's the essence of who he is. Arkane has always excelled at designing mechanics but tempts players with power while attaching consequences. It would not be surprising to see systems that allow Blade to lean more heavily into his vampiric abilities for short, periods of time, such as enhanced speed, regeneration, heightened perception, while simultaneously affecting how the world responds to him. Civilization might fear him more. Allies could question his restraint. Certain narrative paths might shift subtly depending on how often he chooses to indulge that darker side of himself. The tone of Marvel's Blade appears to be one of restraint and maturity. If you've seen the movies. And that strain could be the project's greatest strengths. The Marvel brand is vast, varied, ranging from light-hearted optimism to cosmic spectacle, but Blade has always occupied a darker corridor within that universe. The reveal trail is barbershop setting, the quiet presence, the subtle blood on porcelain, all communicated a sense of controlled menace. It did not really feel like a traditional superhero introduction, it felt closer to a noir thriller with supernatural undertones. That direction suggests a game less focused on bombastic heroics and more on tension, atmosphere, and calculated violence. On another hand, combat, if informed by Arkane's legacy, would likely emphasize player choice and environmental interaction, where rather than simply offering combo chains and flashy finishes, the systems could encourage creative approaches to encounters. Players might stalk enemies across rooftops, disable power grids to plunge areas into darkness, or manipulate rival vampire factions against each other. Blade's swordplay should feel weighty and deliberate. The brutality of combat can coexist, elegance if designed carefully, reflecting Blade's discipline, training, and experience. Narratively, however, there is definitely rich potential to explore. Arkane has a strong track record of weaving class structures and power imbalances into the world, and a vampire aristocracy manipulating human institutions from the shadows would provide good grounds for commentary. Blade's mission could extend beyond simple eradication and into some dismantling systems of control that have existed for centuries. This would allow the story to feel personal and ideological rather than just purely action-driven. Another compelling aspect is how this project may position itself within the broader landscape of Marvel games. The success of Marvel's Spider-Man demonstrated that audiences are eager for high-quality, story-focused superhero games. However, Spider-Man's tone is energetic and emotionally open, filled with bright cityscapes, heartfelt optimism. Blade, however, occupies a different emotional spectrum. By leaning fully into that distinction, Marvel's Blade has the opportunity to expand what a Marvel game can feel like if it does not need to chase the same energy. It could just define its own. From a technical perspective, Arkane's art direction often blends symbolism with realism, creating worlds that feel heightened yet grounded. Applying that aesthetic to a night Paris setting could result in a visually striking experience, with deep shadows contrasting against golden streetlights and neon reflections shimmering across rain-soaked cobblestones. The interplay of light and darkness will likely be central not just to the visual design but the gameplay itself, reinforcing Blade's role as a creature who just walks between two different worlds. Perhaps the most exciting element of Marvel's Blade is its focus. In an era where many AAA games expand into sprawling open worlds, filled with checklists and live service hooks, Arkane's approach tends to prioritize density over size. A more contained, handcrafted city with meaningful side missions and replayable pathways could deliver a more memorable experience rather than a vast but diluted setting. Replayability built into mission design and branching consequences would encourage players to revisit encounters and experiment with different strategies. Ultimately, Marvel's Blade stands at an intersection of character authenticity and studio expertise. Blade is a figure defined by discipline, solitude, and moral complexity. Arkane is a studio defined by systems, immersion, consequences. If those identities align properly, the result could be a superhero game that feels refreshingly distinct from its peers. It would not rely solely on brand recognition or cinematic spectacle, but on atmosphere, mechanics, and narrative cohesion. Blade does not need to shout to command attention. His power lies in quiet confidence and calculated action. If Arkane captures that essence, then Marvel's Blade may become more than another entry. It could become a defining interpretation of the character in interactive form, one that respects his legacy while pushing the genre into darker, more deliberate territory. And when Paris finally falls into night within the game's world, stepping into Blade's boots may feel less like playing a superhero and more like inhabiting a relentless hunter who knows what the real battle is, not just against monsters in the streets, but against the one within himself.